All right, this next video is for all of my runners out there. The weather is getting nice outside, especially here in Wisconsin. Gyms are still closed. Many of you have been increasing the mileage, including myself, and not so sure how well we're all doing with the recovery and self-care piece of it. As runners, we know how important it is for us to keep our bodies mobile and moving. We're just not always the best at actually doing it. So if I can be of any inspiration and empowerment today, it can be as easy as 5 to 10 minutes. Now, the sequence I'm going to show you today involves some movement, some stretching that I find really helpful for myself and the runners that I work with here in the clinic. As a physical therapist in injury prevention, recovery, aiding in performance. And so it is by no means the end all be all, but it is a good variety of things and it is efficient. So I hope you take it all with, whatever it's worth. But if you can save yourself the 5 minutes after a run to do a few of these techniques, you will feel the benefits. It so outweighs the risk of getting an injury, waiting until you're already suffering from pain to wait to do these things. Please just make them a habit. Okay, so we're gonna start with some hamstring stretches. So I'm gonna turn sideways here to the camera, a little bit of space between my feet. I'm gonna come down, my hands are gonna be towards the floor, and then I'm just gonna lift my hips up to the sky as far as my body allows it. Now this is gonna look different for each and every one of you. I tend to have a little bit more flexibility in my hamstrings personally, so I can get my legs almost straight. But it just aids in a little bit of a stretch on and a stretch off. So I've got this deep squat, and then I come and raise the hips up. So 4 or 5 of these. Good, I'm gonna come all the way to like a forward position, let the head hang heavy, arms hang heavy here. Again, not a competition for how low you can go. Then I'm gonna roll my spine all the way up to the sky. I'm gonna reach up, lengthen. I'm gonna turn sideways so you can see me here. So I'm gonna take my right leg and I'm gonna cross it behind. I'll mirror you. So take your right leg, cross it back behind, reach the right arm up and over, and let your right hip jut out to the side. This is gonna stretch through your outside hip here, through a muscle that's important in running called your TFL, one of your hip flexors. If you have any IT band issues, it's good to key into this one. And now watch me here. I'm gonna keep my hip jutting out to the right. I'm gonna start to turn my body, turn my gaze to my outside foot. So I've still got my right hip out to the side, and now I'm reaching down towards my toes, over to the left. I've got a nice big stretch extending through my right hip and down the outside of my right leg. So there's my IT band. Good, now from here, I'm gonna go down as far as I can. I feel that nice good stretch. I'm not gonna hold it super long. I'm gonna come over to the front side, and then I'm gonna just embrace this crossover stretch for a moment. I'm gonna roll my body back up. Okay, I'm gonna just demo that one more time. Reaching over to the side, hip goes out, keeping the hip in that direction. Start to twist my body and my gaze and my reach towards my toes. I feel a nice good stretch at that bottom range, down my IT band, outside of my right leg, and then switching over to the center, reaching my hands to the ground. Feeling the stretch more along the back side of the hamstring this time, and then rolling up, switching sides. Reaching the left leg back behind this time. Left arm goes up and over. Nice good hip flexor, side stretch. And then rounding, reaching towards those toes, extending down just as far as you can here. You may even feel a little stretch up through like the side of your lower back and hip. That's completely normal as well. Reaching towards the center and coming back up. So I'm keeping my movements pretty fluid. I'm not pausing for a long time anywhere. I'm not forcing anything. Taking a moment to embrace the stretch in each little place. I think that's part of the issue too. Runners don't like to sit still. And so I think sometimes it's easier to create a mobility work or stretching routine that's a little bit more fluid. Call it dynamic movement. Okay, there's our IT bands and hip flexors. I'm gonna come down hands and knees, placing my knees hip width apart, hands shoulder width distance. I'm gonna come into cat and cow, so scooping the belly down, lifting the chest, arching my spine, cow pose, and then reaching up to the sky cat pose. I'm gonna go through a few of these each direction. Now you'll notice, if any of you are familiar with yoga, I do have a few yoga similarities here, Pilates similarity movements here. So take it or leave it, but I do think that they can be really beneficial in many ways. Good, last time. So no specific number that I'm shouting out here. I'm trying to make this, you know, just kind of a demonstration of the movements that I would perform. I would say take a moment to go through each of these for yourself and spend a little extra time in the areas that feel like they need it. Okay, so that might be different for you and for me. So now I'm in a downward dog. Okay, I'm nice and strong in my arms, and I'm pedaling out my feet. So this is getting a nice good stretch through my calf, through my hamstrings, all the way up to my tailbone, and whatever leg is reaching towards the floor. Now you'll be able to see in the video here, my heel does make it to the floor when I straighten it out. Yours might not, that's okay, no big deal. And I'm kind of making a triangle pose or posture with my body. My hips are high. Good, so a few on each side. I'm gonna find some stillness. And I'm gonna bring my right leg forward here into a low lunge. Yours may not be as graceful or look as fluid as that. What I might suggest, if you're lacking in flexibility, use some sort of support. Okay, so I've got yoga blocks handy, but you could use anything, a stool, you could use a couch, you could use some stacked up books, whatever is handy for you to kind of get into this lunge position. And then I'm gonna bend and straighten my back knee. Again, you can choose how many times you do each of these things. For sake of time, I'm gonna keep this pretty simple, about 4 or 5 of each. Good, now the back knee stays straight. I'm gonna straighten and bend the front knee. Okay, so I'm working on opening up my hips. Now, if you can appreciate my stance when I'm here, it's a really over-exaggerated stride. Okay, I'm driving my knee forward and I'm extending my back leg back. So this is a really, really important one for runners. Good, finding some stillness in both, holding my low lunge. I'm gonna create a little bit of rotation. So my left hand stays planted, right foot is forward. I'm gonna rotate my spine and my body as I reach my arm up towards the sky. Pause in this twist, and then I'm gonna come back down. Let's do that again. Inhale, reach, twist the body. Again, you might even feel a nice stretch along the back hip, the right hip this time. You can do a few rotations here. Let's do one more. Good, and then I'm gonna drop the back knee down. So from here, drop the back knee. I'm gonna stack my hips. I do not wanna see a big lean forward here. This really doesn't do much. The intention is for the hip flexors, but leaning forward won't do you any good besides put a lot of strain on your front knee. So stack your shoulders, your hips, and your knees all on top of one another. And then I want you to think about lengthening your tailbone, tucking your pelvis underneath you. Pull your belly in, find your core. Instantly as I did that, I feel a nice good stretch along my back hip flexor, my left hip flexor. If you want a little added bonus, you can reach that left arm up and over. And this is gonna get into those hip flexors again, specifically the iliopsoas, if you're familiar with that one. It's a hip flexor that's deep inside your body. Kind of acts as a trunk stabilizer as well. Good, okay, now getting into one of my favorites, quad stretch. So if you are capable, I'm gonna use a big if, you can take the easy way out. grabbing back behind on your ankle. Again, notice how I'm a little tight here. Imagine that. I need to stretch a little bit more. But I want you to think less about this lean forward, stack your pelvis, pull your belly in, lengthen your tailbone. I have a huge stretch going on, okay? Now, some of you might not be able to get there. So again, using what you have in your environment. For the sake of time, I'm just gonna use my blocks behind me. But works really well is like a couch or an ottoman or a chair of some sort back behind you that you can prop your knee in front of, putting your back leg up on top of that step or that chair or whatever it is, and then come back up to this nice, juicy hip flexor and quad stretch. Okay, holding, stretching. This is one that I think just about every one of you, if you go through this, you'll realize, oh, I need to do more of this. Okay, so this is when you might choose to hold a little bit longer. I know I would. Okay, so moving the chair, the blocks out of the way. Coming back to that low lunge, wiggling my foot back, coming back to my downward dog. Again, this might be a great opportunity to come back and stretch out through the lower legs and the calves, the feet. If you have any plantar fascia issues, this, my friends, this downward dog with foot pedaling is a great opportunity to work on that fascial mobility along the bottom of your foot and back of your legs. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing, switching sides. I'm gonna move a little bit quicker this time, finding my low lunge. Up and down with the back leg. Again, I could prop myself up with some blocks or something if I need to. Just kind of depends on what kind of mobility your legs and your hips allow you. Good, and then straightening and bending the front knee. So there's a little bit of a rock of my body back and forth as I do this. I'm gonna find stillness. My right hand stays planted this time, finding my spinal rotation as I reach my left arm up towards the sky, and then back down. Up, breathe. So part of the reason I threw in some spinal movements and rotation has to do with the diaphragm. So our diaphragm lies within our lower rib cage, kind of the middle of our trunk. And it is in charge of your core support, and it is in charge of breathing. Two really important things as a runner. Good, drop the knee down. Coming up, stacking the hips, lengthen the pelvis, pull the belly in, and there's my hip flexor stretch. I'm gonna do the added bonus, reach the right arm up and over. So the reason I bring that up about the diaphragm is if you are lacking in mobility around your middle to lower spine, it can restrict and impinge on your ability for your diaphragm to expand and to breathe well. So if you're someone who struggles with a lot of cramping, abdominal cramping specifically under the rib cage, when you're running, you're probably not breathing very well. You're probably not breathing efficiently with your diaphragm, and it's causing this spasm. Okay, so making sure that your spine is moving well is super important as a runner, which sometimes it's easy to forget about. Good, finding that couch stretch. I'm gonna place my blocks behind me, elevate my foot, coming back up. So we've bent the knee this time. Adding the quads is what that does. Okay, before it was just hip flexor. Now we've got quads and hip flexor that are stretching, okay? If you're flexible enough, you also could reach back behind. Just making sure that you're not leaning forward like this. You truly are being stacked on top of one another, pulling your belly in, and I've got a huge stretch in this right now. Okay, so that's kind of the main lunge work. I'm gonna move this back over out of the way. Last time in my downward dog. And then I'm gonna kind of walk myself in and roll my body up. Okay, come into some lateral lunges. So one option could be to keep the lunges high and just alternate side to side. So whatever leg I'm lunging out on, I'm bending my knee, my hips are going straight back, and then my opposite leg is straight. So I'm doing the work by pushing off that outside leg to come back to center. So again, a little bit dynamic stretch here. If you want something a little bit deeper, you might just walk it down here and kind of army crawl over to the opposite side. So I do get a deeper stretch of my inner thighs, opening up here. My toes and my knees can point different directions. I might even stay here for a moment and kind of sweep them down and up. That stretches different parts of the adductors or the inner thigh muscles and really opens up the hip a little bit differently. Okay, once I'm done with those lateral lunges, I'm going to come to a seated position. Let me face forward for you for this first one. So it's a piriformis stretch. You're going to cross your left leg over. Give your knee a big hug as you pull it in towards your chest, sit up nice and tall, and I've got a big stretch kind of through the outside of my hip and my glute area. I'm just gonna stay here and breathe for a few moments and then switch sides. So notice I'm not holding any of these a really long time, okay? I tend to be one who will hold something for maybe 10 to 20 seconds, and then I'll come back to it, okay? So, you know, whether you're a always hold for 30-second person or 60 seconds or 90 seconds, in all reality, something is better than nothing, okay? So that's where I think a lot of people shy away from mobility and stretching is you feel like, I'm gonna hold it for a full 30 or 60 seconds or 90 seconds, whatever you've been told or taught. Which can be a long time if you were to do that for each of these stretches. So I would just encourage you, go through each of these kind of to the pace that I am. Hold for even a few seconds at a time and come back to it. See how that makes you feel. Again, something is better than nothing. A little bit does go a long way. Okay, so I've done 2 piriformis stretches on each side. I'm gonna flip around, come on to the back side. I'm gonna cross my right leg over my left in what I would call a figure 4 position. Now, if you're pretty restricted in your hips, you might just wanna stay here with a little bit of contact on your thigh or your knee, and this is great. Okay, option 2, rock side to side. It just opens up through the pelvis, the hip, and the low back space. Or if this isn't quite giving you much feedback as far as a stretch or mobility goes, go ahead and pull that left thigh in towards your chest and then do the same thing. So it just deepens the stretch here, but both options, either the foot elevated or the foot on the ground, are great hip openers. Okay, so I might just stay there for a few moments and then I'm gonna switch. Crossing my left leg over my right. Again, option to stay here in this figure 4 with my right leg on the ground, or I can elevate the right foot, interlacing my hands behind my leg. Now, if you're feeling like you can't reach, or you're having to really crunch your head up to reach your hands behind, I would way rather you keep your head down than lift up just to get that clasp. Bigger is not always better, even though we like to think it is. So I would do one of 2 things. I would either go back to this stretch and just stay here, or I would grab like a belt or a loop, something to help you wrap around and hold to pick up your leg so your head can stay down. That's another strategy. Or one other option I just thought of too, you could put your right foot up on the couch or something behind you so that it's resting somewhere, and then you can get that a little bit further along, okay? Now adding a spinal twist, my right leg's gonna come up, my right arm's gonna come out to a T. Again, that rotation is so good for us, and then just let the right leg fall where it lands. And then bringing it back to center, I'm using my core to do that, switching sides. Left leg falls over to the side. Take a few breaths in that spinal twist. You might even feel, it might feel a little restricted, mine does today. And then back to center. So again, a few of these on each side. Breathe. And then last time. So 1 to 2 breaths in this twist is really nice. Might be a good suggestion. And then carefully coming up. So my suggestions for a quick 5, 6, 7 minute mobility work. I took things through a little bit slower so you could see them all, appreciate them all, go through them, but once you kind of get the hang of your rhythm, however you want to pair the exercises together, it really can go pretty quick. I don't spend any more than 5 minutes on that. So, hope you enjoy it, and happy mobility work. It is something that, as a physical therapist, I really believe in the self-care and the prevention. I'm not always perfect at doing it, but if I can be of any encouragement and inspiration for you all as you are increasing your mileage, here's a few tips and tricks I hope you enjoy.